Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Penn Vicarage on this Thursday morning. Great to see you. I hope you're well and cheerful. If I may, before we start, just a couple of housekeeping notices, if I may. Firstly, a heating system in the church is coming on nicely. I went in last night. They've hung some heaters on the wall, and we've now got some fin tubes heating inside of the church as well. So it's all coming together. So we're really looking forward to that. The other thing is this weekend is Remembrance Sunday, and there will be a service on Sunday morning. The service is slightly later than usual. It's 10:45 rather than 10 o'clock, and it won't be communion, of course, but there will be an act of remembrance. If you want a communion service this weekend, I suggest that you come to the 5:30 service on Saturday evening or the 8 o'clock Sunday morning. Also, so there's an act of remembrance Sunday morning, 10:45. Also, Sunday evening is a bereavement service. We've invited all the people who lost loved ones in 2020 to come back to that. But of course, if anybody else wants to come and light a candle during the service, it's a lovely, peaceful, meditative service. And if you'd like to come, you're very, very welcome. But you've come this morning because you want to find out about Mark's Gospel, which is brilliant. And we are now in Mark chapter 15. We really are right at the business end, so to speak. There's only 16 chapters and we're in chapter 15 this morning. To set the scene, to set the context. So far what's happened is Jesus and his friends have had the Last Supper on the Thursday evening, the Passover meal together. Then Jesus has gone out to Gethsemane. He's agonized with God in the garden. He's prayed hard and so on. And then Judas Iscariot and the religious authorities come with their clubs and things to take Jesus, and they take Jesus away. They take him to Caiaphas' house, where they give him the kind of the religious trial. And the strange thing about it is that they must have been really keen to get rid of Jesus, because bear in mind these people had all been at their homes with their families, having their kind of Passover meal, the biggest feast of the year. But they're so keen to get to Jesus, they kind of get out of bed and so on and have this kind of midnight consultation. But they haven't got the power to put Jesus to death themselves. They've got to send them to the Roman authorities. So that's what happens in this morning's reading. So without further ado, Mark chapter 15, reading verses 1 to 15. As soon as it was morning, the chief priests held a consultation with the elders and scribes and the whole council. They bound Jesus, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate. Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He answered him, "You say so." Then the chief priest accused him of many things. Pilate asked him again, "Have you no answer? See how many charges they bring against you." But Jesus made no further reply, so that Pilate was amazed. Now at the festival he used to release a prisoner for them, anyone whom they asked. Now a man called Barabbas was in prison with the rebels who committed murder during the insurrection. So the crowd came and began to ask Pilate to do for them according to his custom. Then he answered them, "Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews?" For he realized that it was out of jealousy that the chief priests had handed him over. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd to have them release Barabbas for them instead. Pilate spoke to them again. "Then what do you wish me to do with the man you call the king of the Jews?" They shouted back, "Crucify him." Pilate asked him, "Why, what evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Crucify him." So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released Barabbas for them, and after flogging Jesus, he handed him over to be crucified. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, so the religious people don't have the power to put someone to death, but they know that Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, does. So they take him off there. I always remember as a child, the name Pontius Pilate used to make me laugh because I always thought a pilot was someone that steered an aeroplane. That's another story. Anyway, that's my childhood memories at the age of 6, being first told this story. But as I read Mark's Gospel, Mark's version this time, two things struck me, which I thought were quite interesting. Firstly, Mark's version is rather simpler than the others. In the other versions, Jesus gets bounced around between Herod and Pilate and so on. In Mark's Gospel here, Herod doesn't get involved at all. It's just, they go straight from the chief priest straight to Pilate, and Pilate sorts it out. That's that. I think the other thing is the attitude of the crowd. I was always under the impression that Pilate wanted to release Jesus, so he kind of found the grottiest, horriblest criminal they can find and says, given you want to release one of them, surely you're going to want to release this nice man Jesus, aren't you? But what's interesting here is, what I hadn't quite spotted before, is the crowd actually wanted to release Barabbas from the start. I think much more than I'd spotted. And I think Pilate, in hoping to release Jesus instead, has kind of trying to kill two birds with one stone. He actually wants Barabbas to be killed, but he actually wants Jesus to be released as well. I think Pilate is kind of hoping to get the best of both worlds, but I hadn't quite spotted before that the crowd are actually quite keen to release Barabbas before that starts as well. But that's just a point for reflection. But what about us? Well, I think the really interesting thing actually about this is the person of Barabbas, because I think Barabbas is quite an interesting character here. I don't know if any of you have seen that film, The Passion of the Christ. I sat through it once. It's over 3 hours. It's a huge long thing. But the one thing they do run, and there's bits which are good, and there are bits which aren't, and you see Mel Gibson's hands and all the usual stories. But I think one thing they do really well is the person of Barabbas. Because put yourself in Barabbas' position. Barabbas was a terrorist. I mean, he'd been caught in the act of murder. I mean, he really was. He wasn't a nice chap. You know, he was a murdering terrorist, and he must have known that he was due for the chop. You know, he'd been caught in the act. It was you can't say it's a fair cop go, like it or not, and he must have known that he was going to get the chop. And then of course, there's decided that the crowd kind of him released. But then up against Jesus, he must have thought, of all against all, he must have thought, I've got no chance against this righteous sort of guy. And then, to his astonishment, the crowd asked for Barabbas to be released. And the thing that the Passion of the Christ does really well is kind of Barabbas he laughs and runs down the stairs, and then he kind of turns round to Jesus and then laughs and runs off again. He must have thought Christmas had come early. The last thing he thought this was my last day on earth. I'm due for a grisly death today, and there's I've been caught in the act, and I really don't have any chance here. It's a fair cop gov. But he turns around and looks at Jesus, because Jesus died in his place, because he must have thought I was going to die at some point today, but actually in the end Jesus was going to die, and he died the death that Barabbas would have had. He literally did die in his place. Now, that's interesting for Barabbas, but in a sense, what about us? Well, the thing that's always puzzled me, it tickles me a little bit, is the word Barabbas, because Bar means son of, and Abba means father. So Barabbas means son of the father. So actually, interesting enough, when the Pilate gives him the choice, do you want Jesus or Barabbas? They're actually saying, do you want the son of the father or the son of the father? Which is quite entertaining in itself, quite interesting thought. Do you want the son of the father or the son of the father? Interesting that. But the other thing I think which is quite interesting is, of course, is that one thing we all have in common, or everyone here, everyone watching this morning, or everybody around, is that we've all at some point had a father. We are all, whether our father passed away years ago, whether we knew our father or not, or whatever. The fact is, we've all at some point had a dad. We are all, if you like, sons and daughters of fathers. So on one level, we are all Barabbas. We are all Barabbas. And Jesus died in Barabbas' place, died the death he would have had. And in a sense, Jesus died for us as well, because we are all Barabbas. And I think in the same way that Barabbas could say, Jesus died in my place, actually, in a sense, we are all Barabbas. And for all of us, Jesus died in our place. Because all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. You have, I have, everybody has. We've all fallen short of the glory of God. But actually, like with Barabbas, Jesus died in our place. He took the punishment for every bad thing we've ever done. He took the rap so that we can have forgiveness